If you've ever thought about living on a yacht or wondered what it's like living on a yacht or the yacht life's even on your bucket list, then you don't want to miss today's episode of Books with Bridgetti. We've been talking to Rosa Linda Román about her memoir, Losing Sight of the Shore, How to Live on a Boat Without Killing Your Family. She also helps families to travel, create content to monetize their adventures and stay fully present for the journey. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Thanks for having me on your live show. It was really my pleasure. Your production is just fantastic. Unbelievable how you guys are pulling that off. So organized with segments and transitions and all those different things. Right in line with what I'm talking about in my new book, Going Live streaming your podcast to reach more people. Hopefully people tune in for our conversations. Definitely worth the on-demand version, in my opinion, if I may say so myself. You guys are awesome.
I think this might be, I've been on over 24 different podcasts and radio shows in the last couple of months, and this has to be one of the most sophisticated, what the kids that I used to teach call bomb.com shows and presentations that I've ever been on. It looks fantastic. Thank you.
I love your introduction. How professional. That sounds, I feel like I'm on a beautiful show here.
Folks, welcome.
Available wherever great books are sold near you.
Oh my goodness, Ross, thank you so much.
Thanks. And, this is one of the most fun interviews that I've ever done. So thank you, Bridgetti.
Big pleasure. Ross, take care.
Thank you.
If you've just joined us, I'm your host, Bridgetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and our stream is made possible by StreamYard and BeLive Media. So special warm welcome wherever you're watching us from. If you are over on Amazon, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, a great big shout out to you, and a huge shout out to my amazing friend Barbara Tomlin, who's watching, and also to Hanley Lizette Vessels. Great to have you join us. Thanks for the compliment. We have got an amazing guest on the show today, Rosa Linda Román, and thanks to Barbara for the introduction, is an Emmy-nominated William Randolph Hearst Award-winning reporter, anchor, podcaster, author, independent director, and screenwriter. She left her TV broadcasting career in 2005 to start her family and returned in 2007. Rosa Linda then launched the very first podcast, and she says they didn't even know what it was back then, in the state of New Mexico, called New Mexi-Cast. That was followed by New Mexi-Castaways. We'll ask her about. So Rosa Linda and her husband lived on 2 sailing catamarans with 3 children and their German Shepherd. She's stories are in her memoir, Losing Sight of the Shore, to live a boat without killing your family. We're going to be talking a lot more about that. So let me welcome my amazing guest, Rosa Linda, to the show with us today.
Hello.
Rosa Linda, welcome. We've got so much to talk about don't even know where to start. Oh my goodness, you've got
Well, I have to
such
start
an
by telling you,
amazing.
I have to tell you, I appreciate that intro. I see why they have all of the reviews are so such rave reviews, because that was awesome. I feel very, I feel I'm in good company.
Thank you. How did you start off getting into the broadcasting industry?
Oh,
Was
good
that a
question.
conscious decision, or did it just sort of happen for you? How did it come
No,
about?
it was definitely conscious. When I went off to college, I thought that I was going to study psychology or astronomy, or I don't even know what. And I was just really searching for something that fit me. And then I went and I actually did an internship where you spend a semester at Walt Disney World at Disney University. And I studied management and communications there. And that kind of started me down the journey of learning about broadcasting. And then when I went back, I took an elective in broadcasting and loved it and fell in love with it. It just so happened the University of Florida, where I went to school, had one of the best broadcasting programs in the country. So I was in the right place, and I got accepted to the broadcasting program and studied, and I have a degree in telecommunications. So I worked at the local stations in radio and television at the PBS stations. And then the way it works in the broadcasting business is you just start at small stations in small markets and then work your way up, over the years to bigger and bigger positions and bigger markets. So that's what I did.
Wow, amazing journey. Oh my goodness. And now that you've segued into podcasting and live streaming, I always find that people I've spoken to said what a huge shift that is in the way things are done. Because instead of having a team, it's now you do everything yourself. What was that experience like for you?
Well, so my last job in broadcasting was at KION 46 in Monterey, California. I was the main anchor, and I did have a great team that I worked with, and they did all the things. And then I showed up and I read, edited some of the scripts and went live. So that was wonderful. But once my daughter was born, she was the famous anchor baby. They came to the hospital to show that she had been born. After that, it was very hard for me to want to go back to that environment. And so, but then 2 years later, when my second daughter was born, I really got the itch to go back into broadcasting somehow. And my friend told me about podcasting, and I'm like, what is that? That sounds very interesting. You're basically cutting out the middleman and you're going straight directly to the consumer. And so I really loved the thought, and I started trying to figure out how to do that. And since I was from television background, I was really interested in the video side of podcasting. So I taught myself, I learned how to do WordPress and build a website, and learned about RSS feeds and all of this. But and I thought when I first started, I was like, I'm going to do a story. And I did feature stories, family friendly feature stories about interesting people and places in New Mexico and beyond. That was my tagline. The kind of stories that I wasn't able to do when I was an on-air TV news reporter, where I was covering car crashes and deaths and drownings and terrible things. So I really wanted to do these stories. And I said, I'm going to do one a week. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll do one a month. And then before I knew it, it was like one every 2 months. It was very hard because I was a one-woman band, and I found myself, I had then 2 little girls, and was really chasing, trying to meet these self-imposed deadlines that made it really a lot more challenging because I was handling everything alone. I remember very vividly having a moment where I was with my family on the beach in Mexico. And by then, by the way, I had turned it from the video podcast. I had been approached by a local TV station to make it a weekly half-hour show. So I was producing all the content, 24 minutes of content for this half hour once a week. And I was I was stretched way too thin doing everything myself. And I remember that day in the beach in Mexico, my whole family's down there having such a great time, loving their life. And I was upstairs trying to finish editing, trying to figure out how to, just get the show on. Plus, of course, internet at that time in Mexico was not so great. So it was very stressful. And I think that was a turning point for me when I decided, okay, I want to be fully present for my family And I've learned over the years, there's a lot of families that feel that way, especially with the YouTube era. It's like everybody's chasing, trying to put more content out. But that's, I don't think the point is to miss your life in order to do that. So that's been a big learning experience for me, since in all of those years that I've been working on podcasts. That's been a big part of what I've been trying to create for me and my family. And now I'm working toward helping other families do that with my business. So that's what I do.
I was quite intrigued by that. Being able to be, because I'm speaking from I'm not even talking about podcasting on the road, but I know when you're on the road and you're trying to take photographs of where you are at, and you get distracted and you kind of miss the actual opportunity being in the moment. And I thought, that's a really fine balance. How do you do that? How do you film on the go? Because that in itself takes so much planning. Can you talk a little bit about the gear it requires, how you deal with the uncertainty of internet connections, and that sort of thing, just for the benefit of people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's changed a lot since then, because back then I needed, the actual 3-chip camera and something so I was working on maintaining the broadcast quality while being on the go. And I learned the hard way, because eventually 2 years later, in 2009, we moved on to a sailing catamaran. I learned that the saltwater is not at all compatible with broadcast equipment. So I really learned that I had to simplify things. And that's when I realized, back then the internet was not very strong. And so we were sailing to interesting places and we had no internet, and we might get internet once in a while. So I realized I couldn't maintain the video work that I wanted to do at that time. And that's when I discovered audio podcasting. So I started just recording my family's experiences as we traveled on this boat, and learned how to, I was brand new to sailing. So, and relatively new mom. So like learning all of these things, I figured that's enough. I'll just talk about that. And then my kid, and if nothing else, I can look back at those, listen to those later when my kids are grown, and think of it nostalgically. Over the years, I tried a lot of I used to use just the audio headphones, like wireless headphones, which was not compatible because of the wind on the sailboat. I finally settled on a Rode Wireless Go microphone, which is my absolute favorite, 100%. I recommend that to everybody, because especially for us ladies, you can clip it right on the inside of I call it the bra mic, on the bra strap, and it blocks the wind, and you can be hands-free, because I learned the hard way, when you have wires and you're walking around and handling things on a boat, that's very dangerous. It's not safe to do that. So going wireless was a really important part for me. And just being aware of the environment is really critical, because when you're walking around and moving and you've got kids coming and going, and by the way, we lived on that boat with our German Shepherd too. So that was a whole nother distraction. So I always just, for the audio, I use my cell phone and a Rode Wireless Go. And I now have a podcast that seems to be okay. I like the sound. I had enough terrible sound over the years that I think that's what I settled on.
So I'm guessing that you had to sort of learn to get out of your own way, because I think, I too am kind of guilty of always wanting things to be perfectish, sort of. You overthink things, and what's the output going to look like? And the reality of the story is that as long as people can hear you clearly, they don't care too much, because they're not expecting television quality from what we do. But we still want to do the best we can. But I just cannot imagine the changes you needed to make to be able to do this on the go and on the boat. With how stable is it on the boat? I mean, with the boat swaying,
we're moving all the time. Yeah. It's not. Part of it is just having a really steady hand if you're getting video or photos. But I also think I really feel like it's a very fine, it's a balance. What you give up in quality, you gain in that sense of presence and reality. I am not a huge fan of things like, I know everybody uses GoPros, and I don't mean to knock them, but I don't like the fisheye feel. I want to, because of my broadcasting background, I want to feel like we're having a personal conversation. And I feel like my viewers, that's what they're interested in. And in reality, we don't have a conversation in a fishbowl. That's very off-putting to me. And maybe it's because I'm old, but for me, that's not really the way I want to tell a story. So being aware of using the tools that are available, which, by the way, I love technology, and I love the way it has opened up possibilities for anybody to tell their story. It doesn't have to be somebody with some, it doesn't have to be a big thing, because there's all audiences for every kind of person. And technology is the great leveling field, like it levels the playing field, which I really appreciate. But I remember when YouTube was pretty new, and I was doing all of these very long form and very highly produced pieces. I would see like this, kid with a camera, and he's like, "Oh, do this," and here's what, and it drove me crazy. And then I got schooled by the next generation, and learning, what, not everybody has to do things my way, and recognizing that there is a market for that. And there's a wonderful, there's TikTok, there's all of these things. I think the critical part is to be very clear on who you are, and then work from there. Don't try to be that other person. I am never going to be a 20-year-old with a video camera. I'm 50 actually. So like, I don't aspire to be that. I'm grateful for the life that I have. I have wonderful kids and a wonderful husband, and I get to travel and do things that I wouldn't have been able to do back when I was 20. So I'm not trying to recreate that, but the other side of the balance is I want to give it the best shot that I can give it. I want to make sure the quality is as high as I can make it. And I learn things the hard way every time. I always say there's two ways to learn: from your experience, your mistakes, or someone else's mistakes. And it's always better to learn from someone else's mistakes. But I learned from a lot of my mistakes. So, here I am.
I know, my goodness. I think we could talk for hours, Rosa Linda. As I was listening to you, I was thinking of this whole thing of citizen journalism, which is a whole new conversation. It's also opened up avenues for people to go live that shouldn't be going live.
Right. I know. That is true. And it also has opened up. I just love when you see, like you're saying, citizen journalism, where there's an area where nobody would have ever had access. And frankly, frankly, being in the setting, like the recording and reporting on it, can change the dynamic in a negative way. So having the tools to empower the people who are actually living these lives, to me, that's golden. To be able to not have to impose ourselves and do it. It doesn't have to be our way. My curiosity. I love to learn, and getting the chance to learn about different places and people and different ways of doing things. And I'm learning all the time. And now I have 2 teenage daughters who teach me something every day, and my 11-year-old son. It's like, okay, I thought I knew some things, and they're showing me that I really don't know anything.
I know, it's interesting growing up with other people, in your life, aka your children. So I want to segue a little bit into how you got into the yacht life in the first place, and how that's been, and how the book came about. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, we're talking to Rosa Linda Román about her journey into yachting, and how that led to her memoir. Rosa Linda, how did you transition from land life into living the yacht life or the boat life. I mean, it sounds very romantic and idyllic, but I don't know what's that. I can also imagine how chaotic it must have been with children and a dog. First of all, how did you even convince your family to buy into this idea,
Well,
especially your
okay.
children?
So first of all, the kids were little. The first boat we lived on, our daughters were 2 and 4, so they didn't get to be convinced too much. They came where we went. And that was actually a great time, and we learned a lot from that experience. And I think that planted the seed for us later in 2016. So we did that for a year back then, and then in 2016 we did it again together as a family with consent and with them mostly fully on board. You know, we all take turns when you live on a boat, or when you're traveling with your family in an RV, or any of the things you're doing. You know, you take turns if you're a well-balanced family. And I think that there are times where my husband gets to decide, and times where one child needs more than the other. And so we're trying to always be in touch and aware of these moments in time. For example, the reason we're on land right now is my daughter is now a senior in high school, and my girls wanted to have a high school land experience, and boy, have they had a land experience. But that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, so back when we first decided to start sailing, my husband was a mechanical engineer, and then at 40 he decided to go to medical school, Nathan. And he was, because of his background in business and whatnot, he was heavily recruited after he graduated from medical school, and he was working nonstop. And we had these 2 little girls, and I barely ever saw him, and it just felt like life was passing us by. And then he had just a really quick heart scare, turned out to be gratefully nothing. But that was just kind of the wake-up call. And I do find a lot of the cruisers that I meet, there was a moment, a wake-up call, something about their current life that just wasn't working anymore. And for me, I had left my broadcasting career to become a full-time mom. Absolutely grateful that I did. I never regretted that decision. And at the same time, it felt like, okay, I'm home alone with 2 little kids, and I never see my husband. This isn't what I signed up for. And so I wanted us to have some time as a family without all of the pressures of work all the time. And we were in a position that we could do that at that point, because he had just left. He was leaving a job, being heavily recruited. And it was like, look, if we're going to do this, we got to do it now or never. And so that's why we bought a boat, and we decided to move on to it. And in fact, we didn't even tell my family. I was so scared about how people were going to react that I told people, well, I think we're going to get a little place on the water in Florida. We didn't say a boat. And so, yeah, we went on. That boat was called Hakuna Matata, because of course with kids on board, it has to be a kid-friendly name. And we learned a lot. It was a small little catamaran, and we got our sea legs. We sailed up and down the coast of Florida, all the way to the Florida Keys, and then across to the Bahamas. And we sailed for basically 1 year. And then we came back to Florida. The reason we moved off that boat is I fell pregnant with Samuel. And so we needed more medical care than you would find on a remote island. So that's how that came about. Then the salty, air was in our blood, I guess, at that point, because we always wanted to get back to it. So when the opportunity came in 2016, we did it again.
So did you and your husband both get your licenses to be able to sail? Was that a process that you had to plan for as well?
My husband is currently the only captain. He actually grew up sailing. He grew up in Tucson, but he and his family spent summers in San Diego. So he would sail, and he had sailing experience. So he came to Hakuna Matata with some experience. And then we had to go through a process together as a couple to make sure we were, in order to get insurance for your boat and to be cleared for the loan to buy the boat and all of those things, you had to prove your proficiency in order to sail. And so we did. I had to handle it myself in order to get cleared, but I'm not listed as a captain. I always want, and that may be something I'll do at some point in the future. But right then I was really focused on being full-time mom. And it worked. So Nathan's the captain, and he's a wonderful captain. He's actually the best captain I know. And then that carried over to when we bought the Dawn Treader, which was the boat we bought it in 2015 and moved aboard in 2016.
Now, you also took your dog on board with you. How did that work? I'm curious because, normally people's like, okay, the dog's going to go for a walk. What do you do out in the ocean?
Okay, so this is really interesting. When we moved on to Hakuna Matata, we brought Tova, was our German Shepherd from here in New Mexico, that we brought onto the boat. And she was miserable. She absolutely hated it. Now, our home is on 75 acres in the forest. She had she could go anywhere she wanted. And now she's living on this little boat. And what is she going to do? I had gotten the advice that you don't let them go to land until you basically designate a spot on the boat where they do their business. And then once they do that, then you can bring them to shore for using the potty or whatever. That was the advice I had been given. It took 4 days. Tova didn't even use the restroom because she knew not to go to the restroom in our house, and she could see that this was our house. So she was very stressed out about the whole bathroom issue and did not want to go to the bathroom on the boat. Eventually she did. We had a designated spot, but that was a very stressful thing, taking the dog from land to the boat. We learned from that. And when we bought the second boat, we did not bring our dogs. We actually had friends who kept those dogs with them. And we got a puppy when we moved aboard. So our now German Shepherd, Nala, we got her when we were on the boat, and she was a baby or puppy, and she grew up on the boat. So she is a water dog. She loves to swim. She's super happy. She's happy here, but she's also happy on the beach. She can swim, with the sharks. She has done that. but yeah, so Nala, I think the trick is get the dog after you get the boat. And there's exceptions. I have friends who brought their dogs from home and they're perfectly happy. But a German Shepherd, a big dog, is a big commitment like that. So yeah, that's what we learned about that.
So I'm curious, did Nala get her name from the children?
Of course, yes. Actually, my niece Leah named her. Yes, just like the boat was named. My favorite book series is the Chronicles of Narnia, and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader is one of those books. So the Dawn Treader name came from that. Yeah, the kids definitely had a part in all of the namings. Our dinghy was called Reepicheep, which, if you've seen the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, that's what the little mouse in that book. So yes, it was a very and that actually brings up a good point, that it's a very different dynamic when you're living on a boat with kids than living on a boat with maybe a couple or a solo sailor. You really have a lot of different considerations when you're a family.
Were there any, what was it like for the children, even when they were young, to not be able to quickly go and play with the neighbor's kids, for example, because they're out in the sea? And did you teach them to learn to swim at an early age for safety reasons? What were the considerations I'm just thinking, if there are other people out there who's considering this journey with children, what were the kind of things that you put into place to make it a safe space for children, young children at that?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's because of my broadcasting background, but in my broadcasting career, I covered the worst of the worst, always some terrible tragedy that happened, and frequently to children. So I err on the paranoid side of the equation. My husband's more the outgoing adventurer. He'll try anything, and I am more cautious. So I'm comfortable being in new environments if I'm prepared, and I make sure that safety is really number one for me. There's no negotiating in that arena. And my husband understands that, and he supports that. So life vests are all the minute they walk out the cabin door, they need to put on they have to have a life vest on. If we're underway in any way, over time, we learned that you could be at a marina and generally they didn't need a life vest just to be tethered to shore. But once we were underway in any way, obviously, and we also had a very strict policy, like nobody was drinking and driving, this is our home. This is our family is here with us. And so we try to be as responsible as we can. A lot of it is empowering the kids to take ownership and to know what the difference is between having fun and risking your life. They have a great respect for the sea because they were so intimately connected to it. And I think the fear comes from when you don't know an environment and it's scary because you don't know. And I will say one other factor that we did when we first moved on to Hakuna Matata, while my husband and I were learning the systems of the boat and prepping the boat, we hired babysitters locally to help us watch the girls and play with them while we handled the boat. Eventually, one of those babysitters came with us as a nanny. So she sailed with us on our first crossing, Miss Melissa. And actually, we just attended her wedding 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of fun because she stayed in our lives. But over the years, we've had a few nannies. I think we had a total of 4 nannies who came maybe for a month or 2 at a time to help us during critical points where we felt like the safety was we really needed someone just to focus on the kids so we could focus on the boat or the skills that we were learning. So
that's amazing. And how did you what was it like for you transitioning from being on land to a boat in terms of the stuff that you took with you? I mean, you can't pack a house into a boat.
No.
What was that like?
I discovered Marie Kondo back in 2015 and her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. It's a system she has called KonMari. And I KonMari'd my house. Basically, you go through the categories of your belongings. So we take every article of clothing and put it in a pile in the living room and sort through that. Then you do the same thing with books and the same thing with, housewares, different categories. So we KonMari'd, we gave away so much stuff. The first time around, I learned with Hakuna Matata, we had downsized our house, but put everything in storage because a family was renting our house. And we only brought a U-Haul. And I thought, this is going to be fine. Well, I have a superpower that I can pack anything into anywhere. And so apparently I had packed that U-Haul way too tightly. And we got to the boat and we were bringing the things on. And my husband's like, we can't put that much stuff on the boat because it will sink. So we had to, I was very heartbroken and had to get rid of a bunch of things before we could move on to Hakuna Matata. So I didn't want to make the same mistake the second time. So I KonMari'd and we got rid of anything that didn't spark joy. That's the whole premise of this system. And then we put some things in storage. We had family friends who decided they wanted to rent our house while we were gone. So they rented it furnished, which helped a lot. And then we put stuff in, we had like a storage area that we put some of our precious treasures. And then, by the way, we moved onto the boat. We had one basically room or cabinet full of our precious documents and treasures and things. And a forest fire moved to this area maybe a month after we moved aboard Dawn Treader and threatened to hit our house. And so my friend had to come here and take all of our things out of our storage to save them from this potential forest fire. It ended up moving away. But I remember you're still worrying about stuff and you're not even near the stuff. It's just stuff.
I know. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's one of the, I remember many years ago, I used to love house sitting prior to getting married and having children, although we did it in the first few years of our marriage as well. And there was one person that I consistently house sat for, and he always said to me, if the house burns down, don't let me know. He says, what can I do?
There's nothing you
He
can do.
says, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. I can't jump on a
Yeah,
plane and save the house. So he
right,
says,
right.
whatever happens, I'll deal with it when I get back. And I thought,
Yeah,
that's an
well,
interesting way. So,
it is an interesting. Well, and you do learn from living on a boat. It's funny because after we moved off of Don Treader and moved back here and kind of accessed what we had stored, I thought, why did we keep all this stuff? what, you think at the time, oh, we absolutely can't get rid of this thing. But once you live on the boat, and this is the benefit of whether you just spend a year, a lot of people that we met were doing like a 1-year sabbatical with their family, and they got a boat, they moved aboard. By doing it that way, you change, and you realize when we came back to New Mexico, we were different, and we looked at certain things that we thought, oh, we can't get rid of these things. We could get rid of those things, and we downsized. You feel much more minimalist about your belongings because you realize that's not really the important thing. It's the being there with the people you love and learning together how to communicate and navigate the difficult times and just growing together. So yeah, I'm happy to get rid of some stuff finally.
it's an interesting thing that, I for me personally, I found that when I've gotten rid of things, it also lowers my stress levels.
It's so true. So true. Yeah, it does. It really does.
You have
Because
less things to worry about.
well, and also I do believe energetically by letting go of the things that no longer belong in your life, it opens up all of the abundance that's just waiting to come into your life. So yeah, that KonMari taught me that for sure. And we, by the way, still do the KonMari process, on a pretty regular basis in our lives. So my drawers, like things are folded in the KonMari way, and you're able, and that helped us because by the way, after we moved off of Don Treader, we spent a year in Austin living. My husband had a job project there. And then we traveled full time, and we were just traveling out of suitcases and traveling in Europe and traveling like on airplanes. And so we had to put stuff in storage in Austin at that point. But we had, we had a different experience. So once you do that, you realize you need even less stuff than you thought you needed on the boat. So, and by the way, we ended up buying back the Don Treader because COVID hit and we couldn't travel anymore. We were traveling full time at the time that COVID hit, and the Don Treader came up for sale again. And so we actually bought back our same boat for a second tour, which was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness, that is so exciting. Rosa Linda, I want to move on to talking about your book. So we're going to take a very quick break and let's talk about the book. If you've just joined us, welcome back. We're talking to Rosa Linda Román about her book, Losing Sight of the Shore, How to Live on a Boat Without Killing Your Family. Rosa Linda, so you've had, we could talk forever. It sounds like you've got stories and stories and more stories that you could tell. Now, a lot of us have interesting things that happen in our life, and I always like to ask authors this. How did you get to the point where you wanted to put pen to paper and write about your family's journeys? What made you want to write it down and share it?
So I have been a writer pretty much since I was a teenager. I've always written journals. I've always been a writer. In fact, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, the William Randolph Hearst Award. That was when I was graduating college. I went to San Francisco, had this wonderful experience. And one of the extra awards that I won was for writing. Even though I was in broadcasting, writing was kind of the area that I guess I was pretty decent at. And when I ended up working in Phoenix, I was a beat reporter and fill-in anchor at Fox 10 in Phoenix. And I covered some really awful stories at that time. And so in order to look for kind of a creative outlet, something to take me away from all of the death and destruction, I started writing screenplays. I got involved with a local screenwriting group, and we were writing little short films, and eventually that's what led to I've been a director in some short films and written some screenplays. In fact, one of the screenplays I wrote at that time made it to the top 5 of the New York International Latino Film Festival, and I did all of those things mostly just to kind of give me something to ease the stress of the broadcasting business. So writing was really a stress reliever. But I realized over the years, I continued to write, and I've always loved writing. I wrote journals for my children, even when I was pregnant with them. So I've always written. The thought of releasing it into the world was a little overwhelming. And I learned about something called NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo is the National Novel Writers Month. It happens every November. And basically you challenge yourself to write 50,000 words in 1 month. In 30 days, you write 50,000 words. And I had heard about that, and I thought, okay, I got to find out about that. And so in 2018, we were moving off the boat. And I guess maybe the answer to your question is, when things are traumatic or stressful for me, I write. And that's like my therapy. So I had been writing a lot as we were moving off of Don Treader. My husband wanted to be on land and he wanted to sell the boat. I was not in favor of selling the boat. But his career was ramping up. Our daughter was then a competitive gymnast. And so we had a lot of reasons to leave the boat. And I was very sad about that. So I started writing almost as therapy for myself. And that's when later that year I learned about NaNoWriMo, and I thought, I'm going to just try it. I was what they call a NaNoWriMo rebel, because you're supposed to write a novel. It's National Novel Writers Month, but you can write really whatever you want. And so I decided to write the memoir. And I succeeded. I actually wrote the 50,000 words. And after November, I finished the book. I had the first draft written by the beginning of 2019. And yet then it was kind of like my husband kept saying, well, you need to send it to people. You need to do something with it. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And eventually, I don't remember what the reason was, but we had some agreement. Maybe it was an anniversary or something. And he said, okay, I remember, it was my daughter's bat mitzvah in 2020. So February 2020, Ziva was having her bat mitzvah in Puerto Rico, which is where my father is from. And my husband's like, when are you ever going to finish your book? And I'm like, well, it is finished. I'd already had an editor go through it and help me edit it. So I had done all the things except push it out into the world. So he made me promise that I would hand it over to him. So I did. I handed it over to him, and we kind of tweaked it over the following. Then COVID hit, and we tweaked it for the next 2 years. My friend Toby Eunice and Shelley Carney, who are local here in Albuquerque, I knew them from the filmmaking world. I found out that they had been self-publishing their own books, and they're wonderful. They look amazing, and they're getting a lot of traction. And so I thought, well, I wonder about that. And I had actually have another friend, Amy Rivers, who is an author, who was kind of giving me some guidance, because I really thought that I would have to go with a publisher and do it the traditional way. Because I came from traditional broadcasting, I thought that's just the way you do things. You go with a publisher, maybe get an agent. I was going to do that next, and I kept putting it off and putting it off. Finally, my friend Toby said, well, I think we can help you. And so together, Toby and Shelley, they're business partners, they helped me do the formatting, make sure everything was where it needed to be. Shelley did a last edit and make sure that everything's right. And we just decided to go for it and actually publish the book. And I mean, I'm sitting here with this book right here, and I have it over my shoulder, and I feel like it's like a fairy tale. Like I really have a book. I can't even believe that I'm like looking at it. That's how I feel about it still, which is kind of funny because I've done a lot of things, but I don't know, something about a book is like, it's just special. Maybe because it's more permanent and people I love can read it. The first time when my niece Sophie sent it to her friend on, I don't know what platform she uses at this point, but like when she said, oh, my Tia Rosa made this book, I was like, oh my gosh, it's real. This is really real. So it's real now.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And the fact that you went the self-publishing route, how long did it take you to work through that process? Because I know there's a lot of people out there, and that's um, a crossroads for a lot of people. Because first of all,
Yeah.
the road to publishing is filled with rejection. I often see authors saying, how many times or how many rejections can you expect to have before somebody says yes? And
Yeah.
literally, there are people who go through hundreds of rejections before they find someone who will publish.
Yeah.
And now, like with the broadcasting, you can also self-publish. How long did it take you to work through that process to go from where you finished the book to actually getting it published?
Well, I mean, I finished the book technically in 2018, 2019. So it's been a few years, but I had no thought of self-publishing until really the last 6 months was when I started thinking, well, maybe I really need to do this. And I realize in hindsight, it's in alignment with my move to being an independent broadcaster, right? I went from mainstream media to doing it independently. So it actually makes sense that this book should be published by myself because it puts the power back in the hands of the people. That's the nice thing about self-publishing. Getting the message out there is challenging. I know that's hard for a lot of people, but I kind of feel like for me, it was just getting out and doing the thing and getting out of your own way. I know you said that at the beginning, and it's like, that's the hardest part, getting out of your own way, not overthinking it. And also I learned something from this coach that I follow, Serena Hicks. She teaches about, like, it's called big happy money. And it's all about like just allowing the abundance to flow into your life. And a big part of that is not having that needy, grabby energy where you're so attached to the outcome that you miss the joy right in front of you. I don't ever want to do that. I want to, and so literally, I don't know if I said this already, but I told my husband, I'm not going to look at the sales of the book right away. I don't want to know how many copies sell. I don't want to know what the reviews are. It was so hard for me to publish this, just emotionally. It was so hard for me to get up the guts to do this, that I knew from broadcasting that whenever somebody would call in and say, oh, she's an idiot or she's terrible, why do you have her on the air? It devastated me. I was so insecure back then because I was a young reporter. I let other people's opinions change me from my trajectory. I don't ever want to do that with this. I love this book. I don't need anybody to say it's the best thing ever. I am so grateful. I just saw my friend Georgia commented on the book, and Barb also. So like I'm so thrilled, and it's so wonderful. And I want to still be okay with myself, even if the only two copies were the one I bought for myself and the one I bought for my mom. I'm really happy that it is a real thing, and I feel very blessed about that.
It's such an amazing thing when you do something just for yourself. It's a feel good thing. And I guess it comes that kind of confidence comes with time and with age.
Yes.
The level of confidence you feel in your 50s is just something that is so amazing.
Yeah. I wish I had known in my 20s about that. It would have saved me a lot of heartache.
Absolutely. Just feeling comfortable in your own skin and doing something because it just gives you inner joy is pure magic. Tell me a little bit about the cover. How did you decide on what to put on the cover of the book?
So I actually hired a guy on Upwork. So in my business, which I have I have women that work for me and edit my podcast. And so now I'm not a one woman band anymore. I'm actually I have a team that works for me. Well, I've hired them through Upwork, and I really have liked that that platform to find just the right person for the job. So I thought, I wonder if I could find someone to help me with the book cover, because my friends Toby and Shelley did a great job on their cover, but I really was looking for a certain look, and I was wondering about that. So I did go on Upwork. I found a great guy. I don't remember his name, but I hired him, and basically this is the author's copy, but the cover looks like this. And I basically just worked with him over several weeks, sent him ideas, and these are pictures of, this one is, let's see, that's Ziva, Samuel, and Ahava, and then there's Nala, and that's on the deck of the Dawn Treader. So he worked with me, took some of my images, and then just created this beautiful cover that I'm really, really happy with. So yeah, I'll have to send you the link so you can link to him, because he was really talented and really reasonable. And so then I took the files that he provided to me, and I gave them to Toby and Shelley, and they then use that in the process of publishing here on Amazon. So that's the way it worked.
It's come out beautifully. I mean, it's just gorgeous,
Yeah.
and it's amazing the thought process that has to go into the your book cover, because for what you're wanting to portray in your book, a glossy cover works perfectly. A matte cover wouldn't have conveyed the same feeling that you get. The paper, everything matters. It's a whole process that goes into deciding how your book is eventually going to look, so that what you wanted to put on the pages and what people see matches up with what you had in your head to transmit to other people. It's a whole thinking process. Rosa Linda, can I ask you to read us a section out of the book, just to give people an idea of what they're going to find in the book?
Okay. And I have to put my glasses on, even though I'm in denial that I need them. When it comes to reading, I do. I'm always laughing at myself because I refuse to admit that I actually need glasses. All right, here we go. They were the longest 10 seconds of my life, lying on the dock, arms in the pitch black water, screaming, scrambling, frantically trying to find my daughter, Ahava, after she and our dog, Nala, had slipped underwater in the foot-wide gap between the dock and the Dawn Treader. It felt as if everything were moving in slow motion and all color had drained out of the world around me. It was nighttime, and the 6 of us, 5 humans and 1 canine, were just returning to our floating home. Having grown up on the Dawn Treader, 1-year-old Nala was as sure-footed as anyone on the crew, and neighbors regularly marveled at the sight of a German Shepherd leaping 5 feet straight up from the dock to the deck. She had done this successfully 1,000 times before, but on that terrifying night, it was raining and slippery, and she didn't make it. With her paws flailing wildly, seeking a foothold, Nala started falling into the water. Ahava and I were both on the dock below, but Ahava was closer. As she tried to stop Nala's fall and give her the little boost she needed to get back up on deck, the Dawn Treader pushed away from the dock, and Ahava lost her own footing. In horror, I watched them both go under, thus beginning those worst 10 seconds I'm referring to. Somehow, my husband, Nathan, managed to jump off the boat over my head and pull both dog and daughter back onto the dock, soaking wet and spooked, but relatively intact. I couldn't tell you exactly how it all happened because, unlike Nathan, who is eerily calm under pressure, I have a shutoff switch in my brain which prevents me from functioning at all in situations like this. Now those horrible 10 seconds become a part of our liveaboard life story, a story I can't help but reflect on as I'm sitting on the Dawn Treader for the last few days she is ours. I can continue if you want. I don't know how long of an excerpt you are interested in.
Oh my goodness, that was amazing.
That gives you a little snippet.
Rosa Linda, that was amazing. So anyone that's watching the show, and especially if you are over on Amazon Live, the book is in the carousel. Go and grab a copy, whether you grab the Kindle version or the paperback. Just grab a copy of that book. It is absolutely amazing. What has the response been so far from people that's read the book? I mean, I'm just looking at the comments here. It's been very heartwarming. How's that made you feel? I mean, you're a real author now, and people are coming back and saying, that they've read the book. How does that make you feel?
It's so surreal. I am so floored by the comments, and also just the realization that people are reading what I wrote. I always I think I always had this vision that I'm writing my journals for when I'm dead, and somebody later, like 2 generations from now, they might be interested in reading it. But to have people who I know read it, and to have strangers writing reviews and telling me that they enjoyed it, that's been a lot of fun. I belong to a group, and that's part of what helped me. You asked me earlier about what helps you with the kids not having other kids. I belong to a group called Kids for Sale, SAIL, not SALE. And that's a place where you meet other sailing families. And when I get comments from others who are thinking about this lifestyle, and just getting that they've gotten some inspiration from what we did, it really warms my heart, because back when we started with Hakuna Matata, we didn't really know. We just were winging it, and it would have been nice to have somebody else's words of not wisdom. I don't want to say like I know all the things. And by the way, this is not a technical boat about like how to install solar or how to run certain things. This is just it's essentially my journal. Someone commented that feels like kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul, little mini vignettes, little stories of our adventures on the boat. So it's very nice to have the comments, and a little surreal at the same time. I really do appreciate it.
I'm sure. And Bob's asking in the comments if you plan to release an audio version of your book. Is that in the works?
Yeah, I've thought that that's probably something I should do, especially since I'm an audio person in podcasting. So I actually have been toying with the idea, because I do live streaming, and I didn't really mention that, but the way I took broadcasting onto the boat is I did do live streams on my Facebook page and on Instagram from our just along the way from some of our adventures. I no longer did those feature stories, but I was doing just like, hey, there's a fireworks show nearby. You want to see that, or whatever was going on. So I actually think I might start doing a live stream where I'm going to record a chapter a week and share that. So as I'm recording the audiobook, basically share that with viewers, and then have a Q&A afterwards. So if anyone's interested in that, they can send me a note. I will do it if people are interested, but I may not want to do it if it's just me, which is fine.
I think there's a huge demand for it. A lot of people like listening, because when they're busy doing stuff, or they're driving, it's a way for them to be able to read more books by listening to the audio. So I think almost from all the authors that I've interviewed, there seems to be this demand for audio. I don't think you could go wrong if you invested the time and the energy into doing that.
Okay, Rosa Linda, I will do it because you said it. I will do it. Okay, I will do it. I have the equipment, so there's really no excuse. I'll do it. I'll make an audiobook because you guys you have expressed interest. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's just amazing. So if people want to find out, if they want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
So I have a weekly podcast. They can go to newmexicast.com/podcasts, and they'll find the podcast there, or you can find it in Spotify or iTunes. It's New Mexicast. And we call it New Mexi-Castaways because we left New Mexico and went onto the boat. So it's either New Mexicast or New Mexi-Castaways. And my website, newmexicast.com. But I post on Instagram not regularly. Sometimes I post on Instagram when I feel like it. And I do respond. I can respond there. And I have a Facebook page for New Mexicast. Basically, my brand is New Mexicast. And you can find me on most of the platforms.
We're just about out of time, but that was one of the questions that I did want to ask is, how did you come up with the the brand name for your podcast and your show?
Yeah.
Was that easy?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I literally, this was in 2007. I was looking at names and URLs for what I could, make a business out of, a podcast. And all of the names, I came up with 100 names, and they were all taken. Everything was taken. And so I had to make up a name. And so since we were in New Mexico and it was a podcast, I dropped the O and added AST, so New Mexicast. So it just stayed with me, and that's my actual brand is New Mexicast Inc. And I do things from there. So New Mexicast, New Mexi-Castaways, and it just stuck, I guess.
I thought that was incredibly clever, and I was wondering how you came up with that. So congratulations. Rosa Linda, this hour went by so quickly. We could talk for another hour very easily. Thank you so much. Can I ask you just one more last time just to hold up your book, because it's a beautiful cover.
Sure, absolutely. There it is. It's a little shiny, but I love it.
It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So that's Losing Sight of the Shore by Rosa Linda Román. Go and grab a copy of the book. Rosa Linda, thank you so much. This was awesome. And I'd love to have you back again sometime, because I think there's so much more that we didn't get to talk about. But thank you for your time. Thank you for the book. And I look forward to talking to you again. To our viewers out there, thank you for joining us today. If you're catching the replay, welcome to the replay. And we'll catch you back on the next episode of Books with Bridgetti. Stay well, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
I think this might be, I've been on over 24 different podcasts and radio shows in the last couple of months, and this has to be one of the most sophisticated, what the kids that I used to teach call bomb.com shows and presentations that I've ever been on. It looks fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
Available wherever great books are sold near you.